Hello, it's Simon Zutshi here. In this property education video, I'm going to talk about the new proposed 99% mortgages that are being introduced or suggested by the Conservative government because they want to stimulate the housing market. They want to help support people who are struggling to get onto the housing ladder. But what's this going to mean for you as a property investor, as a homeowner, as a potential first-time buyer? Is this good news or is this bad news for the UK property market? I think we need to think back to 2007, and at that time you could actually get mortgages for 125% on your own home if you had a good enough income to support that level of mortgage. Now what that meant was if you were buying a property for £200,000, you could actually get a mortgage for £250,000, so £50,000 more than the value of the property. So what that meant was not only do you have to put no money in, you could actually buy a house, walk out with a load of cash. Now some people use that to put into property in the UK, or they bought overseas properties, or they spent it on holidays, cars, whatever, maybe not such a good investment. But the big problem was when the credit crunch came, the global financial crisis in 2008, and we had the property market crash, property prices fell on average 20 to 25%. So what that means is right now, today, there are still some people who took out these 125% mortgages who are only just getting into positive equity, where the value of the property is worth more than the debt on the property. So one of my concerns about having 99% mortgages for first-time owners is if we do see a fall in property prices, that might cause a situation where some people are in negative equity, which means they're trapped in that property, either have to stay there until prices recover, which they might be happy to do, but what if they have to move? What if the family size grows? What if they have to change because of their work or employment and have to move somewhere else and they're forced to sell that property? Well, then they could lose money and be in negative equity. Now, the reason the Conservative government are suggesting this is obviously we have a political party race and a campaign and election in 2024, and housing is a big issue on the political agenda. Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, last year was saying if they got into power, they would build 1.5 million homes over the next 5 years. That's 300,000 homes a year, which is how many both the Labour Party and Conservative government believe we actually need. However, we're not building anywhere near that number of properties, which is why there's a real lack of supply and a high demand for accommodation. But despite that, we are seeing property prices potentially coming down still in 2024. The biggest lender, the Halifax, they believe that prices are going to come down on average 4% in 2024. That's despite having 3 months of property rises in the last 3 months in 2023. So if we also think back to property investors, back in 2007, it was possible to get a 90% buy-to-let mortgage. So you only had to put 10% in, and very often that was a gifted deposit from a developer. So in reality, investors were buying property using none of their own money. And then when the credit crunch came in 2008 and property prices came down, we had the property market crash, we saw prices drop 20, 25%. So a lot of investors had property that they hadn't put any money into, that suddenly were in negative equity, and actually they maybe weren't such a great investment in the first place. You see, back in 2006, 2007, the world global property market was absolutely booming, and everybody seemed to think that property prices would keep going up. Well, the reality is we know property is a cyclical market. Prices go up and they come down. That's what happens in property. Now, generally in the UK, we see prices go up over time. That's because we live on an island with a limited amount of accommodation and an increasing population. So we just don't have enough accommodation. But despite that, we sometimes get these booms and these busts. And back in 2008, 2009, you had many investors who hadn't really put any money into the property, and they were literally throwing the keys in because those properties, not only have they gone down in value, but often they didn't stack up. They didn't actually make any cash flow. Back in 2006 and 2007, many people were buying property that didn't give any money, any profit each month, but they were buying with the hope and the expectation they would make money because the values are going up. So it was a bit of a bubble, it burst, and a lot of people were left very short. So my concern is when you have a 99% mortgage, are you going to get a potential negative equity situation, which is not going to be very good for the homeowner or for the government if they're backing these loans? Now, the reason the government is doing this is because housing, as I said, is a big issue. A lot of people want to get onto it, but simply cannot afford to do it. And the two problems people have when they're looking to get onto ladder is one, they can't save the deposit. So if there's 99% mortgages, that will solve this problem. If you only have to put 1% down, you should be able to get that to be able to get onto housing ladder. And the other problem is the ability to get a mortgage. Now, that's going to be a big problem still. If you're buying a property in London, where first-time buyer properties are almost £500,000, you're going to have a mortgage for something like £495,000. Now, to get that level of mortgage, you're going to have to be earning well over £100,000. So the deposit is one problem that stops people getting their foot onto the property ladder. The other problem that people have if they want to get onto the property ladder is being able to actually afford the mortgage. And with the interest rates high where they are, relatively high compared to the last decade, where the Bank of England base rate was only 0.5%, and now it's 5.25%, much closer to what it was when we had before the financial global crisis back in 2007. So it means that mortgage affordability is a real issue for many people. So it's not just the deposits. There might be a lot of people who, I can easily find 1%, but there's no way I can afford the mortgage if I'm paying 5 or 6% on my mortgage. So I don't think this is actually going to help many people get onto the property ladder. It might be one of those things that sounds like a good idea. Maybe it's designed to get people to vote for the Conservatives. Oh, they care for us, they want to do this. I don't think it's going to see much impact. So some people have said, could this cause a property market boom? Personally, I really don't think that's going to be the case. If investors were able to do this, well, then I think that would cause an increase in property prices because investors wouldn't have to put much money in, but they'd still have the same problem of affordability. There's another way that I'd like to share with you that that first-time buyers can get onto the property ladder, and that's the concept of becoming a tenant buyer. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, basically, if you find someone who's got a property that they don't really want anymore, they're looking to sell it, and maybe it was a former rental property, and they've got it on the market for sale and also for rent, what they're effectively saying is, I want to sell this property, but if I can't sell it now, I'd be prepared to rent it. So a tenant buyer is someone who moves into a property, they look after it like their own home, so the owner doesn't have to have a letting agent, they don't have to pay for maintenance. The tenant, unlike a normal tenant where the landlord would fix the property, the tenant looks after it and maintains it as if it's their own home. But they can get the foot on the ladder, they can lock the price in now. So if property prices are going to go up, they can lock the price in. And often renting is sometimes cheaper than actually buying a property. So if you get a mortgage, you'll put a lot of money, you get a mortgage, it's really high at the moment, actually rent might be lower. So instead of paying a mortgage, they can pay a lower rent, the extra money they would pay on which they can save that up towards their deposit, and then maybe in a few years' time, 3 to 5 years, they'll have enough deposit saved and maybe they're going to be in a mortgageable position. Now, you need to think about affordability. If you're working in a job that's paying you £10,000 a year, you're not going to be able to buy a £300,000-400,000 property. Where maybe you're doing a job right now where you don't have a great income right now. Maybe you're a trainee accountant, a trainee solicitor, trainee doctor, but when you qualify, your salary is going to double up and then you'll be ample income for you to be able to get a really good mortgage. So maybe that's a possibility. The other problem people have getting a mortgage is if someone comes from overseas and they haven't lived in the UK long enough. They might be a foreign doctor coming on a very high salary here, but they've not lived in the UK for 3 years, they won't be able to get a mortgage. Now in 3 years' time, they will be able to. So by getting a property as a tenant buyer, securing a foot on the ladder, they can lock in the price, and then when they've been here long enough, they'll be able to get the mortgage. The other reason people fail to get mortgages is they've got a problem with their credit file. Now, sometimes it could be a very small thing, a few missed payments, etc., or sometimes a big problem. But with enough time, even a very bad credit file can be repaired, and you can massively improve your credit rating such that you are worthy to get a mortgage. So if you've got a bad credit rating right now, it doesn't mean you can never get on the housing ladder. If you work to repair that credit record, become a tenant buyer in a property, then when you're in a position to, you can get a mortgage and buy that property. So becoming a tenant buyer is an alternative way for people to get their foot on the property ladder without having to put in a big deposit now and without having to get a mortgage. It's also really good as well because you get to try before you buy. You see, as a tenant buyer, you have what's called a lease option in place, a purchasing option. So you've got the right to buy this property at some time in the future, normally within a fixed period, 3 to 5 years, if you want to buy. But you don't have to buy. If you decide you don't want to live there, you don't have to buy the property. And maybe it's not suitable, so you can move out, whereas if you actually bought that property and you didn't want to live there anymore, you'd have the cost and hassle and expense of actually selling that property and maybe selling it at a loss if the markets come down. So a tenant buyer really is a fantastic solution. I've got other videos on this YouTube channel. By the way, if this has been useful, I'd love you to like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel as well. And make sure you hit the bell icon so whenever we bring out a new video, you're notified, because I have a lot of timely videos based on announcements and news that's coming out. If you'd like to learn more about purchasing options and in particular becoming a tenant buyer, which is a great way to get your foot on the property ladder, if you look in the link below this video, I've got an opportunity where you can come and get one of the chapters from my new book, which is coming out this month, all about lease options. And this particular chapter is about how to become a tenant buyer. So if you want to get that, click on the link below, come and fill in details, and we will email you a link to that PDF report, which is that special chapter about becoming a tenant buyer. If you're looking to get your foot on the ladder, or you have a family member who wants to get a foot on the ladder, or if you're looking to upgrade where you live to a bigger property in a better area, I highly recommend you check out this chapter in my new book to see exactly how you can do it. So click on the link below and come and find out about that. Also, I'd love to hear your view. Come and comment below. Do you think 99% mortgages are a good idea? Are they actually going to help people or not? Or is it just something designed to try and win votes? I'd love to see your opinion. So until next time, I encourage you as ever to invest with knowledge, invest with skill.